Afternoon session 12 p.m. Jury not present.
Ms. Strofa said, Your Honor, may I just put one matter on the record?
The court said, go ahead.
Ms. Strofa said, I realized during the break obviously that Ms. Murray couldn't have highlighted it, so I apologize. I don't think she did it on purpose, so I just wanted to note that. I realized that the highlighting couldn't have come from this side, so sorry about that.
The court said, let's get the jurors.
The law clerk said, jury entering.
Continued on next page. Jury present.
The court said, please be seated. Remember, sir, that you're still under oath. You may continue your inquiry.
Ms. Murray said, thank you, Your Honor.
By Ms. Murray.
Ms. Loftus, if we could please pull up Government Exhibit 412T. We'll go where we left off, which was page 13. Mr. Khaled, what is a pass-through?
That's an entity or an account that money comes in or goes out right away. No activity other than that.
What are some of the reasons, if any, that an account would be used as a pass-through?
Ms. Strofa said, objection.
The court said, you may answer if you know.
Just to prevent the two parties from being involved in the transaction.
Mr. Khaled, you were talking about, or, actually, Ms. Loftus, if we could just go, please, to page 12 of this transcript, and focusing on the portion you see on the screen here, Mr. Khaled. Can you read what Mileson stated in this portion of the call?
But I'm not actively, but I'm UBO, but UBO is Mr. He. I am just the settler. By Dutch law. I do have some sort of saying, but I'm not practicing it.
Mr. Khaled, what did you mean when you said that Mr. He was the UBO on paper?
That he was just on the legal documents. But not actively managing or dealing with any of the employees or the products.
Was Mr. He involved in any of these conversations that you recorded in this time period from April to May of 2021 regarding the G Club's funds?
No, he was not.
Ms. Loftus, if we could please go to Government Exhibit 413A and 413A-T, Mr. Khaled. What is the date of this call?
May 12, 2021.
What time?
7:58 a.m.
And who are the participants?
Mileson Gwa and myself.
Ms. Loftus, if we can please play Government Exhibit 413A.
Media played.
Can we pause, Ms. Loftus? Mr. Khaled, what does BVI refer to?
British Virgin Islands.
What were you proposing with respect to Crane BVI?
That we create like a private equity structure for Crane and then move the money from Crane to that entity and then move the money back to the media company when it's created. It wasn't created at that time, so they're working on creating the company. And the money was gonna get transferred there.
And why, if at all, move the money from Crane's US accounts to BVI accounts held in Crane's name?
To satisfy what they were asking for, to move the money out, the reason they gave. Miles and Mileson was the money needs to go out of the US. So by creating a BVI entity, the money will be outside a US company.
What did you believe was the real reason that Miles Gwa and Mileson wanted to move the money outside of the U.S.?
Ms. Strofa said, objection.
The court said, sustained.
Mr. Khaled, you testified earlier when we listened to a call regarding the CCP. Do you recall that?
Yes.
At the time of these conversations in May of 2021, did you have an understanding of why Miles Gwa instructed you to move the money outside of the U.S.?
Ms. Strofa said, objection.
The court said, you may answer.
Yes, to make the investment in $. At that time.
At that time, did you have an understanding of the reason for the instruction to move the money outside of the U.S.?
Ms. Strofa said, same objection.
The court said, you may answer.
To invest it in $.
Ms. Loftus, we can continue.
Media played.
Mr. Khaled. What was the timing of these discussions regarding the transfer of the money in Crane's accounts?
That it need to be urgent, time is of the essence.
And with whom, if anyone, did you discuss the urgency of these transfers?
Everyone, Miles Gwa, Mileson, David from Long Island, Yvette.
Mr. Khaled, there was some discussion in the calls that we listened to about mercantile. What is mercantile?
Mercantile was also a bank. An international financial institution licensed in Puerto Rico acting as a bank. And they were the bank where Medici had an account.
And what type of account did Medici have at mercantile?
A correspondent bank account.
Ms. Loftus, can we go to the top of Government Exhibit 413A-T, please? Mr. Khaled. What is the date of this call?
May 12, 2021.
Ms. Loftus, we can take that down and put up what's in evidence as Government Exhibit GC 502. If we could go down the chain, please, and focus in on the body of this. Mr. Khaled, what kind of document is this?
It's an email.
From whom to whom?
Alex Hadjikaralambous at G Club.
And to whom did he send this email?
Elizabeth Burstler at Morgan Stanley.
What's the date of this email?
May 11, 2021.
Looking at the body of the email, can you read the amount that's listed for the wire referenced?
15 million.
And the account name?
Deltec Bank and Trust Limited.
Looking at the next line, what is the geographical location of the address associated with Deltec?
Bahamas.
And then going down to reference memo, can you read what that line reads?
100-179-601 Hamilton Digital Assets Fund SP.
And 2 lines below the internal reference.
Loan.
And, Ms. Loftus, if we could go up the chain, please. 1 more up, please. Focusing on the top email. Mr. Khaled, what day was this email sent?
May 13, 2021.
From whom to whom?
From Alex Hadjikaralambous to Limori Reyes, Ana Izquierdo, and me.
What is the title of the attachment that was attached to this email?
15 million from Morgan Stanley 051321.
Finally, looking at the body of the email, the second sentence, what does that read?
The first 15 million of the 30 has been authorized and will be sent out today, May 13, 2021.
Thanks, Ms. Loftus. We can take that down. Mr. Khaled, during your testimony yesterday and today, did we listen to every recording that you made in April and May of 2021?
Yes.
The entirety of each recording that you made we've listened to in this court today?
Ms. Strofa said, objection.
The court said, overruled. You may continue.
No.
Ms. Strofa said, objection.
It was?
The court said you may answer.
It was parts of each recording.
Approximately how many recordings, if you recall, did you make during that time period?
I don't have the exact amount.
Did you record every conversation that you had with any of these individuals in April and May of 2021?
No, not every conversation. There was conversations that were not recorded.
Did you provide every recording that you had in your possession from these conversations to the government?
Yes.
Who, if anyone, chose what recordings to listen to during your testimony here?
The government, you.
Who, if anyone, chose what portion of the different recordings to listen to during your testimony here?
You did.
And who, if anyone, prepared the transcripts of the conversations that you recorded and provided to the government?
You guys did.
Mr. Khaled, I'd like to direct your attention now to July of 2021. Did there come a time when G Club instituted adversary proceedings against Crane?
Yes.
What type of proceedings were those?
An arbitration.
What was the subject matter of that arbitration?
Money that was still with Crane.
What money?
The transfers that had came in from November and the portion that was not already transferred to G Club.
And what was the approximate volume of those funds that were at issue in the arbitration?
I think the total was about 50 million.
The court said, before you ask the next question, how did you make the recordings?
The witness said, through an app on my phone.
The court said, go ahead.
Did you make the recordings at the direction of anyone?
No.
Returning to the arbitration in 2021, which party filed that action?
G Club Operations Puerto Rico.
Against what entity or entities?
Crane Advisory Group, LLC.
What was the outcome of that arbitration?
There was immediate injunction and transfer of the monies to the attorney of G Club.
Can you explain what you mean by immediate injunction?
So the money was blocked.
And the injunction was issued against whom or what entity?
Crane Advisory Group.
After that injunction was issued, what, if anything, did you do with the money that was in Crane's account?
Transferred out.
Where did you transfer it?
I transferred it to the law firm of Aaron Mitchell.
Why did you transfer it to that particular law firm?
Cause G Club had no other accounts open.
Who, if anyone, provided you with the account information for the Aaron Mitchell account to receive those funds?
It was done through the attorneys.
Was Crane party to any other adversary proceedings with G Clubs?
Yes.
What type of proceeding?
It was similar second arbitration to take back fees and either fees of what Crane had received.
For that second arbitration, who were the parties to that arbitration?
G Club Operation, LLC and Crane Advisory Group.
Who filed that arbitration?
G Club.
During the course of that second arbitration, what court proceedings or legal proceedings, if any, were there?
It was dismissed.
Prior to dismissal, were there any official proceedings relating to the arbitration panel?
Yes, there was a full hearing.
Who, if anyone, testified at that hearing on behalf of G Club?
Anna and Limari and a forensic accountant.
Did you participate in that hearing?
I did.
Did you hear the testimony that Ana Izquierdo gave to the panel?
Yes.
And did you hear the testimony that Limari gave to the panel?
Yes.
Ms. Shrofa said, "Your Honor, may we approach, please?"
The court said, all right.
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
Ms. Shrofa said, "Your Honor, I just wanted to flag for the court the question about participated by Mr. Khaled. I'm assuming the government knows he asserted his fifth. So I'm not sure what it is what the participated means. But to the extent the government is going to ask him his opinion either Anna or Limari lied during the arbitration, I would ask the court to not allow those questions. They're improper as to whether or not he believes they told the truth."
The court said, I wanted to understand what happened at the second arbitration.
Ms. Shrofa said, "The second arbitration is for the return of the fees. There was a full-blown hearing. And 3 individuals testified. The lawyer testified. Ana Izquierdo, she testified. Mr. Khaled's 3500 material demonstrates that he's been asked to give his opinion, she lied. And he repeatedly gives the suggestion that she lied. Limari Reyes also testified. And I think they're trying to elicit in his opinion she lied in the arbitration."
The court said, what is it that they lied about?
Mr. Kumraju said, I guess they'll say I believe it's about Ms. Wong's role at G Club. At least that's my understanding from Ms. Molinari's 3500.
The court said, what is it that they said about Ms. Wong?
Mr. Kumraju said, Ms. Molinari's testified that in essence Ms. Wong had a connection to G Club. And admitted that there was some control owner. I'm sure the government will spell it out. So in the 3500 material for Ms. Molinari's, it seems clear that they've suggested that that was a misrepresentation of Ms. Wong's role. I think the issue for this witness under Rule 608b. I don't think you're allowed to inquire of a witness of a specific instance of untruthfulness in order to impeach another witness's credibility through extrinsic evidence. Which would be what this is.
The court said yes. Go ahead.
Ms. Murray said, few things, Your Honor. With respect to Mr. Khaled's impression of false testimony that Ana Izquierdo Limari Reyes gave during arbitration. It's broader than simply Ms. Wong's role. His view is at that point. Well after the G Club's money transfers and after at least Ana Izquierdo had left G Clubs. He did not believe they were truthful when they testified about the services that G Club offered. About the member benefits that they testified that it provided to its members. His impression from his conversations with them, including at the time period these calls we've listened to, is they well knew that there were no such benefits and services. And, in addition, he would testify that he believed that both of them lied about the fact that they told the arbitration panel that Crane was an entirely independent company, that it had no connection to G Clubs, and they were trying to represent it as an arm's-length consultant, even though again they well knew that it was intricately intertwined with the G Club companies.
The court said, "How is it that you get him to impeach those witnesses at the arbitration?"
Ms. Murray said, "It's not impeachment of those particular individuals. It's simply introducing statements that were made in the context of the RICO enterprise by agents of GTV, who were operating in different entities within the enterprise."
The court said, "Go ahead."
Mr. Kamraju said, 1. I think his belief as to the truth or falsity of another person's statement, particularly a person's statement who is not Mr. Gov't, is irrelevant. I think that's consistent with rulings Your Honor has made before. But second, this is exactly what Rule 608 is talking about. It's inquiring about specific instances of other dishonest acts that are outside of a criminal conviction. So I don't see how that is outside of 608b.
The court said, "Their theory is that Ms. Izquierdo and the other person, they're both agents of GTV."
Mr. Kamraju said, "Right, which I still think they have to establish that. I think they have not. We've heard no testimony from Ms. Molinari's or about Ms. Molinari's role other than she is the CEO generally of G Club. They haven't tied those two things together. But either way, the agency proposition overcomes a hearsay issue. It doesn't overcome 608b issue. Frankly again, they're going to call Ms. Molinari's. Ms. Molinari's can testify about whatever misrepresentation they think she made. I don't know why this witness's belief as to the truth or falsity of those statements is relevant to any question."
Ms. Strofa said, "It only goes to bolster in a roundabout way Ms. Reyes' testimony. Ms. Reyes is going to testify. They tried to flip Ms. Izquierdo, and she didn't flip, so she's out."
Ms. Murray said, "We reject that characterization. The arbitration in question. The second arbitration related to the release of fraud proceeds. Fraud proceeds that Crane was holding. And in furtherance of getting those fraud proceeds released to G Clubs in an effort to get them back within the RICO enterprise. Once Mr. Khaled was now separated from the RICO enterprise, these two individuals lied to the arbitration panel."
The court said, "Do you have authority for me?"
Ms. Murray said, "Regarding the specific testimony?"
The court said, "The admissibility of this testimony."
Mr. Finkel said, "Your Honor, I think it's just a piece of any other co-conspirator statement. It's very consistent with that. His view is based on his personal observations at the time. He's not impeaching their credibility vis-a-vis their specific testimony. I think that's really what 608b really turns to. I could be wrong about that. I'm not certain."
The court said, "Why wouldn't it be impeachment?"
Mr. Finkel said, "It's the same sense of how Yili testified that the affidavit she received from Yongbing Zhang was criminal attorney, emphasis on criminal, was false because she had experiences that countered what the affidavit represented. Same thing with Mr. Khaled. He's had experiences that countered what was being represented. I think it's important for the jury to understand, particularly in light of where the cross is going to go, as to why the arbitration decisions came out in the way they did, which is that G Clubs misrepresented facts in furtherance of the RICO enterprise. And G Clubs is firmly part of the RICO enterprise. I think, Your Honor, Mr. Khaled can certainly, I don't think there'd be objection to this, bring out the statements that he observed Limari and Ms. Izquierdo made in further of G Clubs trying to obtain money. Those are clearly agent statements. So the question then becomes whether he can. His view or his understanding whether those statements were true or false. And any co-conspirator could do that because he's experienced in a conspiracy, and that's standard 701 standard.
Mr. Kamraju said, I'm sorry, no.
Mr. Finkel said, "It is, and it's consistent with how this trial is proceeding."
The court said, I don't know what the answer is, and I'm going to ask my clerks to look at this. We need to jump to another subject matter.
Mr. Finkel said, "I just want to make sure everything is clarified. I assume the government can inquire about. I don't want to run afoul about what the court just said, what he observed about Ms. Izquierdo and Ms. Reyes' statements."
The court said, I want to skip over this whole subject matter for now.
Ms. Murray said, this is the tail end of this witness direct examination. I guess I would ask if we look into this issue and it does come up that we can inquire into it. We will be permitted to do that on redirect.
The court said, of course, definitely. Absolutely. Even if I don't come up with an answer, you can recall him. All right.
Continued on next page. In open court.
The court said, you may continue.
By Ms. Murray.
Mr. Khaled, focusing on the second arbitration, you mentioned that there was a hearing. Did you testify at that hearing?
Yes, I did.
Were you asked questions at that hearing?
Yes.
How, if at all, did you respond to those questions?
I pleaded the fifth.
I apologize. I didn't hear that.
I pleaded the fifth.
And yes or no answer, did Ana Izquierdo testify at that hearing?
Yes.
Limari Reyes, did she testify at that hearing?
Yes.
What, if anything, was the outcome of that second arbitration with respect to the fees that were in question?
Dismissed.
What, if anything, happened to the money that was the subject of that second arbitration?
Can you elaborate?
After the second arbitration, what happened to the money?
I think it stayed in the assets that I bought, but then forfeited through the non-prosecution agreement.
And that's the $2.7 million we discussed earlier?
Yes.
Focusing on the first arbitration. What was the approximate total amount of money that Crane was directed to transfer to Aaron Mitchell's bank account?
I believe about 50 million.
And do you know what happened with that money after it was transferred from Crane to Aaron Mitchell's law firm account?
No, I don't.
Ms. Murray said, may I have a moment, Your Honor? No further questions.
The court said, cross-examination.
Cross-examination. By Ms. Shrofa.
Mr. Khaled, you started at Citibank on October 14th of 2014. Is that correct?
I don't remember the exact date, but it was October of 2014, yeah.
So I have trouble hearing, so I would really much appreciate.
I don't know the exact date, but it was October of 2014.
And you testified on direct that you worked for Citibank for about 4 years, correct?
Yes.
And you stopped working there on October 30th of 2020, correct?
Yes.
You got a job offer from Golden Spring on July 6th of 2020, correct?
No, it was from Saraca.
You got a job offer from Saraca. Is that your testimony?
Yes.
And that was also on July 6th, 2020, correct?
I believe so.
Do you want something to help refresh your recollection?
Sure.
Ms. Murray said, objection, Your Honor. He didn't indicate that he doesn't have a recollection.
The court said, sustained.
You remember what date it was?
I don't remember the exact date.
You don't remember the exact date.
The court said, he said he did not remember the date, so yes, you can attempt to refresh his recollection.
Ms. Shrofa said, thank you, Your Honor. So if I could have it made larger, please. So on the top right corner, does that help refresh your recollection?
Yes.
And you got the job offer on July 6th of 2020, correct?
Yes.
And the start date, according to, you know what, do you recall your start date on the job?
It says here to be determined.
Right. My question is, do you remember your own start date?
August 1st.
And you give notice to Citibank that you were leaving on October 19th of 2020. Is that correct?
October. I don't remember the exact date.
How about your last day at Citibank? What was your last day at Citibank? Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember the exact date, just October. I don't know.
Do you remember if it was October 30th of 2020?
No, beginning of October, maybe October 1st.
Sitting here today, your testimony is you don't remember if it was October 1st or October 30th.
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor." Asked and answered.
The court said, "Sustained."
When you started your job at Citibank, you went through an onboarding process, correct?
Yes.
And part of the onboarding process involved you getting trained by Citibank, correct?
Yes.
They gave you internal training on issues that would come up while you were an employee of Citibank?
Yes.
They trained you on how to open bank accounts for Citibank, correct?
Yes.
They gave you a training manual, correct?
Yeah.
They gave you a set of rules and they asked you to read them, correct?
Yes.
They asked you to read the rules and then asked you to acknowledge that you had read the rules, correct?
Yes.
They asked you to acknowledge by signing a document that you had both read and knew the rules, correct?
Yes.
And you did that, did you not, sir?
I did.
You were given a code of conduct to read by Citibank, correct?
Yes.
And you read that code of conduct, correct?
Yes.
You were asked to affirm that code of conduct, correct?
Correct.
And you agreed to abide by Citibank's code of conduct, correct?
Correct.
You agreed and you affirmed to follow all of the rules that Citibank imposed upon its employees, correct?
Yes.
Citibank also had an employee manual that they gave you a copy of, correct?
Yes.
And that employee manual clearly stated that you were not to accept outside employment while an employee of Citibank. Is that correct?
I don't remember the exact terminology.
Was the gist basically what I said, that you could not work for somebody else while you were collecting a paycheck as an employee of Citibank?
Needed proper prior approval.
I didn't ask you that question. My question was, were you aware that Citibank would not permit you to work for another person while you were employed by Citibank?
Yes.
You knew that if you worked for another entity while employed by Citibank, you could create conflict of interest situations, correct?
Correct.
You could jeopardize the bank, correct?
Can you explain?
You could jeopardize the insurance policy of a bank if you did business with somebody who was a customer of theirs, correct?
I don't know that.
You could jeopardize the welfare of the other entity that you were working for secretly while working for Citibank, correct?
I don't know that either.
Citibank has a compliance department, correct?
They do.
And this would raise compliance issues for them, correct?
It could.
And you knew all of that when you continued working for Citibank after having accepted a job at Saraca and after you started a job at Saraca, correct?
I knew that I couldn't get that job, no.
And you did it anyway, correct?
Yes.
Now, let me show you what is marked as Defense Exhibit 60524. Do you recognize this document, sir? And feel free if you would like us to help you scroll through.
Ms. Murray said, "Your Honor, I would just note it is not before the jury. There is personal identifiable information that is not redacted on this document. So we would just ask that before it's published to the jury or the gallery it be redacted."
Ms. Shrofa said, "I do not intend to publish anything that has any personal information on it."
The court said, "Good."
Do you recognize that document, sir?
Yes.
Could you tell us what it is?
City employment application.
And whose city employment application is it?
Mine.
Ms. Shrofa said, "Your Honor, most respectfully I ask that DX 60524 be admitted into evidence at this time."
Ms. Murray said, "Your Honor, the objection relative to the issue that I just stated stands."
The court said, "She just said she does not seek to publish it at this time."
Ms. Shrofa said, "I do not seek to publish any page that would disclose any such information." If I could just go to page 12 of the exhibit.
Ms. Murray said, briefly, "Your Honor, we understand it would be admitted. We would just ask the admitted version that's in evidence have the redactions apply, so that the version that is in evidence is redacted."
Ms. Shrofa said, "Sure. No problem. May I go to page 12 of the document? And if I could have it made more convenient for reading by the witness." Your Honor, I'm assuming the court has granted my application to admit it into evidence.
The court said, "It is admitted."
Defendant's Exhibit DX 60524 received in evidence. By Ms. Schrofa.
If you could read under the section A, do you see the title is Regulatory Information, correct?
Yes.
And you answered each one of these questions, correct? A through all the way down to G, correct?
Yes.
Now, if you can take a look at question number 1, and you see the question has any domestic or foreign court. You see that question?
Yes.
And you have subheadings under that, correct?
I have what?
There are sub-questions under that question, right?
Yes.
If you look at F, you see F?
Yes.
And that question is, have you been or have you ever, has anyone ever enjoined you or entered an order or taken any other action against you in connection with any financial services related activity? Correct?
Yep.
And you answered no, right?
Yes.
Is it fair to say, sir, that at that time or before you had owned a company called Autobox?
Yes.
And you had in fact defaulted on a business loan with Autobox, correct?
Correct.
Autobox had sued you, correct?
No.
I'm sorry. The customer had sued you, correct?
No.
The customer hadn't sued you on November 21st of 2013?
The customer?
Yes.
I don't recall.
How about the lender? Had the lender sued you?
Yes.
And a court in California entered judgment against you, correct?
Correct.
The judgment was entered on April 22nd of 2014, correct?
Don't know the exact date.
And you did not indicate that on this application form to Citibank, correct?
Correct.
Now let's go to paragraph 10 if we could, please. You see that paragraph?
Yep.
And that is the acknowledgement section. Is that correct?
Yes.
And in the acknowledgement section, there are certain numbers. You see that paragraph where it says employment and code of conduct?
Can you zoom to it?
Sure. We can try and highlight that for you. Right above, I understand, right?
Millimeter HM.
And Citibank is telling you all of the things that it will do, correct?
Yes.
And then it asks you to represent certain things to Citibank, correct?
Yep.
The first thing that you're representing to Citibank under oath, because you have to acknowledge it, I don't know what the acknowledgement was, that you were legally free to enter into an employment relationship with Citi. Correct?
Yes.
What does that mean to you, sir?
Don't know the legal term of it.
I cannot hear you.
I don't know the legal term of it. Legally free.
You tell me. You acknowledged it. So what did you understand it tell you to do or be?
That I can become an employee of Citibank.
That you could what?
I am free to become an employee of Citibank.
But you're representing that, right? It says I represent that.
Okay.
So you're telling Citi that you are free to be their employee, correct?
Correct.
And what does number 2 tell you? That you have no obligation to any other person or entity that would affect or conflict with your employment with Citi. Correct?
Yes.
And then, if I could just skip down to I further represent. Could you read that for the jurors, please?
I further represent that if I am hired, I will disclose to Citi any current or future outside business interests for the purpose of determining compliance with regulatory standards and Citi policy.
Keep going.
And I understand that certain affiliations or activities may be impermissible under such standards and/or policy. You want me to continue?
No, that's fine. You did not live up to those 2 obligations, correct?
No.
You can take that down. There came a time, sir, that you resigned from Citibank, correct?
Yes.
And when you resigned from Citibank, Citibank terminated your employment pending investigation, correct?
I don't know that.
You testified on direct testimony that, I take that back. Let me move to another topic now. I'm going to talk to you about Ms. Wang. You testified about her at great length during the direct, correct?
Yes.
And you testified that you were introduced to Ms. Wang through a law firm. Is that right?
Correct.
Which law firm?
Ratkin Ross, LLC.
Who at that law firm introduced you to Ms. Wang?
Valerie Stevens, Hutchinson and Ross. That's what it was.
And it is true that introduction you spoke to Ms. Wang about opening bank accounts for Golden Spring. Was that your testimony, sir?
Yes.
And when you asked Ms. Wang about Golden Spring, she told you that it was a family fund, correct?
Family office.
She told you Golden Spring was a family office?
Yes.
And she told you what that office consisted of, correct?
Can you elaborate?
She told you what Golden Spring was, right?
Yes.
She described what the company was all about, right?
She described it, yeah.
There was a conversation, a back and forth between you and her, right?
Correct.
And you're a Citibank employee at that point, right?
Yes.
And you wanted to build a rapport with her, right?
Not build a rapport.
You don't want to build a rapport with a potential customer?
I asked her information about what the business does. It's part of the account opening.
It was a friendly conversation, right? You want to build a rapport with your customer, right?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor," asked and answered.
The court said, "Sustained."
You wanted to cultivate a business relationship, correct?
Correct.
And Ms. Wang answered your questions, correct?
She did.
At no point did she tell you a question was not to be answered, right?
No, I don't think so, no.
And after you had the initial conversation, you continued conversating with Ms. Wang, correct?
Can you be more specific?
Sure. You had follow-up questions to pose to her, correct?
Can you be more specific?
No.
The court said, "Were there ongoing discussions with her?"
The witness said regarding the account, yes.
And she gave you her phone number, correct?
She did.
She gave you both her landline and her cell phone number, correct?
I don't believe there was a landline.
Did she give you an email address?
Yes.
She had a Proton email address. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And Citibank had no rule against people having a Proton email address, correct?
Don't believe so, no.
You iPhone messaged with Ms. Wang, correct?
I could have.
You texted her questions? She texted the responses back, correct?
Probably, yeah.
You asked for paperwork from Ms. Wang, right?
Yes.
You needed information to open the account, correct?
Correct.
She sent you documents. You made a copy of the documents and you sent it to the back office, correct?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection to compound."
Ms. Strofa said, "I'm happy to break it up, Your Honor." You asked for document from Ms. Wang, correct?
Correct.
And you asked for information from Ms. Wang, correct?
Yes, I did.
One piece of information you asked for was an EIN number, correct?
Part of the account opening is an EIN number. I don't know if I asked her directly or she provided me documents that had it.
Could you tell the jury what an EIN number is?
Employee identification number.
Did you ask her for articles of incorporation for Golden Spring?
Yes.
And she provided them to you, correct?
Yes.
You asked her for an operating agreement, correct?
Correct.
And she provided that document to you, correct?
Yes.
You asked her for identification, correct?
Correct.
And she provided identification to you, correct?
Yes.
Citibank has an accounting department, correct?
A what?
Accounting department.
I'm sure, yeah.
And a compliance department, correct?
Correct.
You sent all of this information to the relevant departments, correct?
Yes.
Waited for verification from those departments to be sent back to you, correct?
Can you be more specific?
You had to wait until those departments approved the application, correct?
I'm not sure if it was the policy like that where you needed an approval.
Well, you approved the application after receiving all of the information, correct?
There wasn't an approval process that way.
Well, how did the bank account open unless it was approved?
We open it and then the documents get tested by compliance and they give us approval.
And you got full approval, right?
Yeah.
After you got full approval, the account was completely opened, correct?
Correct.
And Ms. Wang had told you that there was going to be an initial deposit, correct?
Yes.
And, in fact, she told you the deposit was going to be $1 million, but it turned out to be about $600,000. Correct?
I don't know the exact amount.
Was it not one of the documents that you reviewed with Ms. Murray when you met with her 19 times?
Don't recall, no.
When you opened accounts for Ms. Wang or for Golden Spring, you made sure to comport with Citibank's policy, correct?
Yes.
And you opened more than one account for her, correct?
Correct.
And that was in no way an obligation of Citibank's policy, right?
That's what?
That was not contrary to Citibank's policies, correct?
No.
In fact, Citibank encouraged you to open multiple accounts for business entities, correct?
Correct.
Golden Spring had at least 2 signers on each account, is that correct?
I don't remember the exact number of signers.
Do you remember Ms. Wang was a signer?
Yes.
Do you remember Melissa Menendez being a signer?
Yes.
Do you sitting here today, do you know what Ms. Menendez's job was at Golden Spring?
She was an accountant, an office manager as well.
And sitting here today, do you know she still works at Golden Spring?
No.
As a banker at Citibank, you had a view and transparency into the accounts, correct?
I had what they gave me in terms of information.
You could look at what transactions were going on in a bank account, correct?
Okay, yeah, correct.
And that's because you worked at Citibank, correct?
Yes.
And you saw that the Golden Spring account received money from Golden Spring Hong Kong, correct?
Might have been.
Ms. Murray said, objection, hearsay.
The court said, if you have direct knowledge, you may answer the question.
I don't remember all the transactions that came in.
Ms. Shrofa said, well, let me show you DX 10339, and it's just for the witness, please. This is pursuant to the Citibank stipulation. Your Honor. At this point pursuant to the stipulation I ask that DX 10339 be admitted into evidence.
The court said, no objection?
Ms. Murray said, no objection, Your Honor. Thank you. We were just confirming.
The court said, it is admitted.
Defendant's Exhibit DX 10339 received in evidence.
Ms. Shrofa said, if I may publish it to the jury.
The court said you may.
Tell us, Mr. Khaled, what is this document?
That's a bank statement.
For which bank?
Citibank.
For whose account?
Golden Spring New York Limited.
For what time period?
March 30th to April 25th.
Let's go to page 3 of the PDF, please. Could you take a look at those 3 transactions for me?
Yes.
Is that money coming into the account?
Yes.
Who's it coming in from?
ACA Capital Group Limited.
What's the date?
May 2nd.
And what's the amount for each deposit?
100,000.
So all totaled, and this is easy math, so it's 300,000?
Correct.
Let's look at page 51 of the PDF. It's Bates ending 58122. If you could look at the February 12th, 2019 wire. Could you tell us what transaction that is, sir?
That's a debit transaction.
What is a debit transaction?
Money going out.
Money going out from which account?
Golden Spring.
And where's the money going to?
Rule of Law Foundation.
And what is the Rule of Law Foundation, sir?
You're asking me at this time?
No, sir. I'm asking you.
At that time?
At that time.
At that time, I did not know.
I'm sorry.
At that time, I did not know.
You did not know?
On February 12th of 2019, I did not.
And after that, as the person who got to know more, did you come to have an understanding of what the Rule of Law Foundation, Mr. Khaled?
This is a different bank statement.
I'm not asking you about the bank statement, sir. I'm just asking you about the Rule of Law Foundation.
Okay. What's your question?
My question, sir, is what is your understanding of the Rule of Law Foundation?
It's a non-for-profit foundation.
Thank you. If I could go to page 52. And if I could focus you on February 15th, if I may. What is that transaction if you could explain it to the jury?
That's an ACH debit.
And what is an ACH debit?
It's an ACH, money going out.
And what does it say underneath that?
ADP wage pay.
And what would that tell you as a banker?
Payroll.
It would tell you that this bank account is making payroll. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you see a deposit there of $500,000 from something noted as IMMA?
Yes.
And what is IMMA, sir?
A money market account.
And the money market account is putting into Golden Spring $500,000. Is that correct? Am I reading that right?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. I'll make it easy for you. You tell me, what is this showing?
It says credit transfer from IMMA.
So it's money coming in?
Correct.
$500,000?
Yes.
Now, let's look at page 122, a January 31st transaction, $24,236.41. Somebody's getting paid?
Yes.
ADP wage pay, correct?
Correct.
Page 123, there's a $10,000 payment, correct?
Correct.
Payments being made to a law firm, correct?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor."
What is that payment going to?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection based on the court's prior ruling."
The court said, "If you'll step up, please."
Continued on next page. At the sidebar,
The court said, "So in my ruling I said you could not call attention to attorneys."
Ms. Shrofa said, "This is 2018. There's no advice of counsel defense here. I'll move on, but that is not how I read it. I'm simply trying to show the money coming in and going out. I'm happy to move on, but there's no reliance on this law firm for anything."
Ms. Murray said, "Your Honor, a few points. 1. I would note the face of this document doesn't indicate Wachtell Misri as a law firm. Ms. Schroff testified to that and put that in front of the jury. 2nd, Your Honor is correct. We believe this is squarely within the prior ruling which we clarified a day or two ago, where we had a similar issue come up where defense called out a presence of a law firm before we could submit proper argument. I would also submit that 2018 is within the charged conspiracy."
Ms. Shrofa said, "Right. But there is no advice of counsel issue in 2018, number 1. Number 2, questions by a lawyer. This is basic criminal law. Questions by a lawyer are not evidence. The only evidence is the response. And the response was, he didn't know. So my question doesn't do anything because it's not evidence."
The court said, "You're calling attention to the relationship with an attorney."
Ms. Shrofa said, "No, I'm showing that bills were paid out of the account including to an attorney. That is not calling attention to it. It's just a bill being paid."
The court said, "That's exactly what you're doing. Did you want to say something, Mr. Kamraju?"
Mr. Kamraju said, "I believe there's going to be another witness named Daniel Podhasky who is going to testify at some point. My understanding from his 3,500 material and his prior SEC testimony is that he testified that a lot of the bills going out of Golden Springs were to pay for litigation. Litigation that led to protest the government's highlighting. I'm just trying to understand how those two things interact if we're not allowed to. When they put Mr. Podhasky on the stand with bank records to say, 'You were paying in connection with all this litigation, but..."
The court said, "Well, it's one thing if he's on the stand, but you're picking out bills paid from an account specifically calling attention to certain bills, one of which is this law firm."
Mr. Kamraju said, "I understand Your Honor's ruling here. I'm just trying to make sure looking down the road I don't want to come back and have this issue again."
The court said, "I'm glad. Okay, we're done."
continued on next page. In open court,
The court said, "You may continue."
by Ms. Shrofa.
And this was an account maintained at Citibank, correct?
Can you repeat that question?
The document that I showed you is for an account maintained at Citibank, correct?
Yes.
Now, by 2020, Golden Springs account had been opened, correct? By January of 2020?
Yes.
And you had moved out of opening bank accounts, correct? You had moved to another department within Citibank, is that fair to say?
Correct.
You had moved on to healthcare, is that right?
Yes.
And that was also sort of the beginning of the pandemic, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Did Citibank have a policy of remote working during the pandemic?
Yes.
And what was the policy?
Work from home.
And you were asked these questions on your direct, but you heard again from Ms. Wang in January of 2020, correct?
No, it wasn't January.
Okay. In what month of 2020?
I believe it was May.
In May of 2020. How did she reach out to you, by the way?
WhatsApp or text message? I'm not sure.
You're not sure?
Text message.
And she texted you and asked you what?
She needed my help to open a bank account.
She wanted to open a bank account, correct?
Yes.
And did you reply to her text and answer her question?
I'm sure I replied, yeah.
Do you recall letting her know that you had moved on from opening bank accounts to healthcare?
Yes.
You were not going to be able to open an account for her, right?
Me personally, no.
Right. So did you just continue talking to her about what kind of account she wanted to open anyway?
I might have, yeah.
Excuse me.
I might have, yeah. Continue.
You didn't right off the bat tell her, I'm in healthcare, right? You continued to talk to her about what kind of account she wanted to open?
Yeah.
Right. You asked her what account is it. What is the account for, correct?
Correct.
You asked her the name of the company, correct?
I might have, yeah.
Excuse me.
I might have, yes.
She told you the name of the company, correct?
Yeah.
She told you it was a media company, correct?
Correct.
And she told you the name of the company, correct?
Yes.
She told you it was GTV, correct?
Yes.
And all of this time you knew that you couldn't open an account for her, but you kept talking to her, correct?
Correct.
You looked up the media company, correct?
Yes.
You went on that website to check it out, correct?
Correct.
You knew you couldn't open an account, but still you went to investigate the company, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And you knew that the company had a bigger account with another bank, correct?
She told me, yeah.
And you continued talking to her about that account even though you were not in that department anymore, right?
I had made the referral already.
You already made the referral, but you continued talking to her?
Yeah.
So you made the referral to somebody else at Citibank, correct?
Correct.
So some other person at Citibank is working on this account with Ms. Wang, correct?
Yes.
He's trying to establish his own rapport with her, correct?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor."
The court said, how could he know what the other person was trying to do?
Isn't that what you're trained to do as a Citibank employee? Develop a rapport with your customer?
Yeah, but I don't know what he did.
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor."
The court said, as to relevance, please move on.
You knew from talking to Ms. Wang that it was a large account, correct?
Yes.
You asked her how large an account was it, correct?
No, she told me.
She told you how large the account was going to be with the understanding that you were still going to open the account, right?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor."
The court said, he could not possibly know what she had on her mind.
You were talking to Ms. Wang throughout this time, correct?
Yes.
And you were in healthcare?
Yeah.
To open this account, did you have her send the documents to you or to the other person at Citibank?
The other person.
Your testimony is that Ms. Wang sent the documents to the other person at Citibank, correct?
Could have been copied, but definitely the other person was working with her.
You were copied, right, Mr. Khaled?
I might have. I don't remember.
Do you remember the name of the other person?
James Song.
Right. And Mr. Song, and you were on the same email chain getting documents from Ms. Wang, correct?
The court said, you can answer.
I don't remember.
I'll come back to that. The account was opened on June 3rd of 2020, correct?
I don't remember the exact date, but in June.
You kept in touch with Mr. Song and asked him how the account was going, correct?
Yes.
You asked Mr. Song how much the balance was in that account, correct?
Yeah.
And Mr. Song is the one who told you that there was $200 million in that account, correct?
Yes.
And you wanted to know that because you wanted to get credit for that account, correct?
Yep.
There's something called a 30-day balance for a referred account, correct?
Correct.
And there's something called a scorecard at Citibank, correct?
Correct.
Each employee has a scorecard?
I don't know that for certain.
You had a scorecard, correct?
I did.
And this account you wanted to make sure showed up on your scorecard, correct?
Yes.
You wanted it to show up because it was a large account, correct?
Correct.
You wanted to make sure you kept your relationship with Ms. Wang, correct?
Yeah.
And then you took that account and you referred that account to an outside financial advisor, correct?
Can you specify?
Sure. Who is Eric Mark?
Eric Mark is a financial advisor at the same branch I worked at.
And what did you do with Mr. Mark and Ms. Wang? The Golden Spring account, I mean the GTV account.
I asked him to connect with James for a large account opportunity.
You asked him to connect with James as opposed to Ms. Wang. Is that your testimony?
Yes.
And once you connected them, you learned from him, did you not, that there was some kind of investigation? Correct?
Yes.
And you knew of that investigation from someone at Citibank that you trusted, correct?
From Eric Mark, yeah.
You trusted Mr. Mark, right?
In terms of what?
He's your colleague, right?
Yeah.
You trusted the information he was giving you, correct?
What do you mean?
He gave you a piece of information that these companies could be under investigation. And you trusted that information, right?
He gave me the information.
Right. Excuse me.
He gave me the information, but what do you mean trust?
You thought the information was correct, right?
I just got the information.
So somebody's telling you that the person you are engaging with is under investigation, those companies, and you just kept that information as a banker and did nothing more?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor, misstates testimony."
The court said, "Sustained."
What did you do with that?
Just reviewed it, saw the article.
You reviewed it and saw the article?
Yeah.
And then you continued dealing with Ms. Wang?
Yeah, it was an investigation.
You did not report it to Citibank compliance, correct?
No.
And you continued to talk to Ms. Wang even though you moved on to healthcare, right?
Ms. Murray said, asked and answered.
The court said, "Sustained."
Mr. Khaled, in 2020, would it be fair to say that yourself were having some financial issues?
Yeah.
Can you speak up?
Yes.
It's fair to say you were having financial issues?
Yes.
And you had declared bankruptcy in 2018, correct?
Correct.
And that was in Eastern District of New York, Brooklyn right here, correct?
No.
Where was it then?
Islip, Long Island.
Still under the Eastern District purview, correct?
I believe so.
And that bankruptcy, the trustee in that bankruptcy moved to dismiss that bankruptcy on February 16th of 2018, correct?
Yeah.
And they dismissed it because you didn't keep up with the bankruptcy-related payments, correct?
That was improper documents, that's why they dismissed it.
I'm sorry.
Improper documents that were filed.
You filed improper documents or somebody else?
My attorney.
Your attorney filed improper documents, so the bankruptcy was dismissed. That's your testimony?
I believe so, yeah.
You believe so or you know?
I think that was dismissed because of that, yeah, because of improper documents.
Okay. The court dismissed another bankruptcy on November 21st, 2018, correct?
Correct.
And that was also because you failed to make the agreed-upon payments to people you owed money to, correct?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor, mischaracterizing the reason for the prior dismissal."
The court said, "Sustained."
Why was that bankruptcy dismissed, sir?
For the same reason.
Oh, your lawyer again made a mistake?
Yeah, it was right after a month in between them, correct.
So the lawyer made a mistake the first time. Was it a different lawyer now, or you kept the same lawyer that had made the mistake?
I think I kept him.
So you made the mistake now the second time?
I believe so, yeah.
And did you keep him after the second time?
Yes.
So you kept him after this second time, and then the bankruptcy was dismissed again in February of 2019. Correct?
It was all under one bankruptcy, so it wasn't separate three. There's one bankruptcy that stayed active.
Right. And it stayed active because you didn't make payments to people you owed money to under the bankruptcy plan, correct?
No, it stayed active until now. Like, it stayed active. Those three is one. Those three that you just.
Did you owe money to people?
Yeah.
You didn't pay it, right?
Now I did, yeah.
You paid it when?
Through the bankruptcy.
2024?
There's 2 payments left.
Okay. So you haven't paid it yet, right?
There's 2 payments left.
So 2 payments are left. That means you haven't paid it yet, right? Help me out here.
Yes, there's 2 payments left out of the 100% owed, correct.
So you haven't paid it off yet, right?
Ms. Murray said, objection.
The court said, sustained.
Ms. Shrofa said, I haven't gotten an answer to that question.
The court said, sustained. He has answered the question.
Sitting here today, is it your testimony that the bankruptcy trustee did not move to dismiss these bankruptcies on December 21st of 2023?
December 2023, yeah, the last 2 payments have not been paid.
How about on March 25th of 2024? Do you remember the bankruptcy trustee dismissing the bankruptcy as recently as March 25th of 2024 for failure to pay?
Yeah, I didn't pay those last 2 payments.
And throughout the time you were employed, at least from 2018 until 2020, you were employed by Citibank, correct?
Correct.
You did not tell Citibank that you were in bankruptcy, correct?
No.
And did you tell the bankruptcy trustee about this $2.7 million judgment?
The what?
The $2.7 million judgment now. Have you told the bankruptcy trustee about that?
Ms. Murray said, objection, Your Honor, mischaracterizes what the $2.7 million is.
The court said, you can ask whether he's told the bankruptcy trustee about the $2.7 million obligation.
Ms. Shrofa said, thank you, Your Honor. You can answer that question. Thank you.
No.
Aren't you required to do that?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
Still have the same lawyer as before?
Yes.
Have you checked with him if you have this obligation?
Ms. Murray said, objection, Your Honor.
Ms. Shrofa said, I'll move on. In June of 2020, Citibank itself had taken adverse action on the GTV and Saraca accounts, correct?
Yes.
And you yourself in 2020 were looking to get out of Citibank, correct?
Yes.
Continued on next page. By Ms. Shrofa.
You were the one who asked Ms. Wang for a job opportunity, isn't that correct?
No.
You asked her about the possibility of opening up a consulting firm?
It was discussed, not me asking.
How would she know about your desire to open a consulting firm if you didn't tell her about it?
Ms. Murray said, objection, Your Honor.
The court said, sustained.
You told her about your desire to open a consulting firm, correct?
It was discussed.
You'd run your own business before, right?
Yes.
It had not been successful, correct?
Correct.
You wanted to try again, correct?
Yeah.
You wanted an international client base, correct?
Yes.
And Ms. Wang and her companies provided that, correct?
Yes.
You made the pitch, she turned you down, correct?
I don't know what you mean.
I'm sorry?
I don't know what you mean.
You said, can you and I form an international consulting firm? She said no, correct?
No.
Okay. You then asked her if there was a need for a person like you at GTV, correct?
I don't recall.
You said to her, I can help you open bank accounts, correct?
I don't recall these exact words.
Well, you texted with her, right?
Yeah.
You texted with her on iPhone, correct?
Correct.
You texted with her on Signal, correct?
Correct.
And you testified on direct that you perceived Ms. Wang to be a caring person towards her employees, correct?
She acted caring, yeah.
You testified to what you testified to, sir. I'm just asking you, that was your impression. At least back then, correct?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor." Argumentative.
Ms. Schrofa said, "I'll move on, Your Honor." That was your impression back then, sir?
Impression of what?
Of her being a caring person.
Back then, yeah.
Okay. You asked her if she could set up a job interview for you at GTV, correct?
It wasn't asked, it was discussed, and she asked me.
It was discussed, but she asked you. That's your testimony.
Yeah, it was a discussion, back and forth.
Okay. In any event, you had an interview, right?
Very informal, yeah.
Very informal interview with whom?
With Yvette.
With Ms. Wang?
Yes.
Where was the interview, sir?
At the townhouse, 162, East 64th Street.
And now let me ask you this question, here. In the 19 times that you met with Ms. Murray, did you ever call the East 64th Street building a townhouse?
Yes.
Really?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor."
In all the times that you...
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor."
Ms. Schrofa said, "I'll move on."
The court said, "Please don't say really. Go ahead."
Ms. Schrofa said, "I apologize, Your Honor. In all the time that you talked to Ms. Wang about meeting with her, did she ever refer to the East 64th Street structure as the townhouse?"
I believe so, yeah.
You believe so?
Yeah.
Okay. When you entered the building, what is the big sign you see over there? Ms. Schrofa said, "Can you show it to him, please?"
Big sign? What do you mean? Where?
Let me show you a photograph, if I may, okay?
Sure.
Ms. Schrofa said, "Your Honor, I don't have an exhibit number, but I'm going to go with 7001, Defense Exhibit 7001.
The court said, "Okay."
You see that?
Yes.
Recognize it?
Yeah.
What is it, sir?
It's a very small sign called the Himalaya Embassy.
Where do you see that sign?
It's right here.
No. In real life, where do you see that sign?
What do you mean?
Where else have you seen the sign?
On that building.
On that building, right?
Yeah, next to the door.
Ms. Schrofa said, "Okay. I move 7001 into evidence, please."
Ms. Murray said, "No objection."
The court said, "It is admitted."
Defendant's Exhibit 7001 received in evidence.
That's what they called this building, right? Ms. Schrofa said, "If I could show it to the jury."
Are you asking me?
Excuse me?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
That's what they called the building?
Yes.
No.
So on the building when you enter, you see the sign, right?
Who they?
East 64th Street is a building, right?
Yes.
Ms. Murray showed you the photographs, correct, of the building?
Correct.
She had shown you those photographs when you prepared with her 19 times, correct?
Correct.
She's never shown you this photograph, correct?
No, I didn't see it.
Right. And this, the Himalaya Embassy, appears on that building, correct?
Next to the door.
Of that building.
Next to the door of that building.
Right. East 64th, correct?
162, East 64th Street.
Right. And when anybody wants to meet there, they say, "Let's meet at the embassy," correct?
The court said, "Sustained."
Isn't that building known as the embassy and not a person calls it the townhouse?
No.
Ms. Schrofa said, "Okay. You can take that down. Is this the building where you had your interview, East 64th?
Yes.
And Yvette was there, correct, Ms. Wang?
Correct.
She was formally dressed for the interview, correct?
She was dressed normal.
Well, you wore a suit, right?
Yeah.
It was a job interview, right?
No. It was like a meeting, like I said, an informal meeting.
It was an informal meeting for which you sent her a resume, correct?
She asked for it, yeah.
So you sent it, right?
I did send it.
Before you sent it, you updated it, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. She reviewed your resume with you during the interview, correct?
Don't recall.
Asked you questions about your experience, correct?
No.
No.
Ms. Murray said, "Is there a question pending, Your Honor?"
The court said, "What is the question?"
What month was this interview in, sir? Do you recall?
I think it was in June.
June of 2020, right?
Yes.
Pandemic is still surging, correct?
Yes.
And you went for an in-person interview, right?
Again, it's a meeting. I went for a meeting.
You went for an in-person meeting, correct?
Yeah.
There was a follow-up? You'd call it a meeting, I'd call it an interview, but there was a follow-up, correct?
Follow up for what?
To that interview.
In what sense?
Well, did you get the job at the first informal discussion, as you call it?
Yes, I got a job offer.
You got a job offer right there on the spot.
No.
Yes or no?
No. No.
No.
No.
Okay. So you said yes, then you said no, so I want to make sure which one.
Ms. Murray said, "Your Honor, objection." That mischaracterizes the witness's answer.
The court said, "So did you get a job offer at the first meeting?"
The witness said, no.
Okay. So they brought you back, correct?
No.
Did they set up a second meeting?
Yes.
Where was the second meeting?
It was a Zoom or WhatsApp or a Zoom, a video call.
A video meeting?
A video call, correct.
Okay. And whether they brought you back in person or on WhatsApp, they brought you back for a second interview, correct?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor. It's mischaracterizing."
The court said, "Sustained."
Okay. What was the Zoom meeting for?
Yvette wanted me to meet Miles Gway.
Who else was at the meeting?
On the call, it was just Yvette and Miles Gway and myself.
Okay. And did you meet Mr. Gwa?
On the call, yes.
Could you see his face?
Yes.
So it wasn't a call, it was a video, correct?
That's what I meant, a video call.
So on this video call, Mr. Gwa asked you questions, is that right?
I can't recall if he asked questions.
And how many days after that, according to you, did you get a job offer?
I don't remember the exact days.
Okay. Do you remember negotiating with Ms. Wang what your salary would be?
A little bit, yeah.
Well, it was a lot of back and forth, correct?
I don't know about a lot. I don't know the exact number of back and forth.
You texted with her, right?
I did.
And you texted with her about the dollar amount of your salary, correct?
Yeah.
You wanted a certain number, and she right off the bat wouldn't give it to you, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Right. In fact, you texted her and you told her that you were considered one of the top bankers at Citibank and she should give you the salary you were asking for. Remember that?
Not in these exact words. I don't remember.
I'm sorry?
I don't remember the exact words, no.
But the gist of it is the fair one, right?
What's the gist? What do you mean?
That you told her that you were considered one of the top bankers at Citibank, correct?
Again, I don't remember the exact words.
Ms. Strofa said, "May I, Your Honor?"
The court said, "You may."
Does that help refresh your recollection, Mr. Khaled?
Yes.
May I? And you pitched to her why you should get the salary you wanted, correct?
Again, I wouldn't call it pitch.
Okay. What would you call it?
I was simply asking if I have security in the job that they're going to be offering me.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that. You asked her that question, correct?
Correct.
And what is it that she told you? Do you remember?
She said, if you want security, stay at Citibank.
Exactly. She told you if you wanted security, you should stay at Citibank, correct?
Yes.
And then you continued to negotiate with her, correct?
I continued talking to her, yeah.
I could not hear that.
I continued talking to her.
But you didn't just talk to her, you talked to her about the salary amount, correct?
The amount was discussed.
Right. You told her that you were going to forfeit your bonus at Citibank, so she should give you $70,000 to make up for the lost bonus. And she said no, right?
I told her about a bonus, yeah.
You told her you wanted a 2-month signing bonus. You said that to Ms. Wang, correct?
Could have, yeah. Yeah.
And she said no, right?
I don't remember what was exact reply, but I didn't get that, no.
You did not get that, correct?
No.
She told you if you wanted job security, you should stay at Citibank, correct?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor."
The court said, "Sustained." Asked and answered.
She answered all of your questions honestly, correct?
The court said, "Sustained."
Did you think that question was honestly answered by Ms. Wang, stay at Citibank?
I wouldn't know if it was honest or not.
Okay. And despite her admonition, you decided to take the job, right?
Despite what?
The admonition from her, you decided to take the job, right?
Can you explain what admonition is?
It's okay. I'll move on. You told Ms. Wang at some point that you were going to accept the job, right?
Yes.
And she put you in touch with Ms. Grace Yong. Is that right?
Correct.
And that's because you still had more questions, correct?
No. She just put me in touch with her.
You asked her questions about your role at GTV and she told you, talk to Grace Yong, correct? Do you recall that?
No.
Okay. Ms. Yong worked in HR, is that correct?
Yes.
She answered your questions, correct?
She gave me a scope of work.
And you described your conversation with her as a great conversation, correct?
I told her that I had a great conversation with her.
You accepted the job offer, correct?
Correct.
You did not get the salary you asked for, correct?
No.
And no, you did not get it, right? I just want to make sure the syntax is correct. You asked for more. You settled on $350,000, correct?
I agreed on the $350,000, correct?
Right. But you'd asked for more, right? You'd asked for $450,000. You got $350,000.
I don't remember exactly, but definitely more than $350,000 for the bonus, yeah.
And you accepted the job, correct?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor." Asked and answered several times.
The court said, "Sustained."
Ms. Shrofa said, I did not hear the answer, but I'm happy to move on. And on July 7th, July 10th of 2020, Ms. Wang reached out to you to ask you if you had resigned from Citibank, correct?
She might have. I don't remember.
Does that refresh your recollection, Mr. Khaled?
Yes.
She asked you, did you submit your resignation, correct?
Correct.
You say, not yet, correct?
Correct.
You never say to her, I'm not going to resign right now. I'm going to keep the job at Citibank and hedge my bets, correct?
No.
And in fact, you respond to her and say you have to finalize some things, correct?
Correct.
You hedge, correct?
I'm what?
It's all right. I'll move on. You start working, right, at East 64th Street, you said, yesterday?
Yes.
And Ms. Murray asked you to describe your first few days there, correct?
Correct.
And you described them as chaotic or weird. Is that correct?
I said weird, not structured.
Okay, so let's talk about that. When you were working during those weeks before October 30th at East 64th, you were working 2 jobs, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did Citibank give you a work phone?
I don't think so. Not at that time.
In July of 2020, Citibank did not give you a work phone, right? I just want to make sure I understand correctly.
I don't remember.
Okay, so you had a 9 to 5 job at Citibank, correct? And a 9 to 5 job at East 64th, right?
9 at F5, correct. But it was pandemic time.
Okay, but you still owed 7 hours to one job and 7 hours to another, right?
It wasn't an hourly job.
You wouldn't take a salary if you weren't working for a company, correct? Because that would be theft.
I was working, but again, it's not an hourly job of 7 hours and 7 hours.
So for about 3 months, you worked 14 hours a day? That's your testimony?
No. It was 2 months, yeah.
So for 2 months you worked 14 hours a day. Let me try it this way. If you were at East 64th one day and a Citibank employee or client called you, how would you prioritize?
The court said, I'd like the lawyers to step up, please.
Continued on next page. At the sidebar,
The court said, so you're asking him about theft of wages, and he has a right against self-incrimination, and so I'm going to have to advise him of his rights.
Ms. Shrofa said, you can. I have no objection. I mean, but he did steal.
The court said, well, this is at the level of a state charge. I don't expect that the immunity of the...
Ms. Murray said, Your Honor, we don't have any objection to this line of questioning. He disclosed it to us. It came out on his direct testimony. We believe it's covered by his non-prosecution agreement, which covers him for any conduct relating to the entire time that he worked for GTV. For Yvette Wong during that period.
The court said, but not a state crime.
Ms. Shrofa said, I think he should be advised because it is a state offense.
Ms. Murray said, so typically, Your Honor, for purposes of our non-prosecution agreements or any agreements we enter into, state crimes, crimes that are out of statute, etc., are not at issue. He was advised by counsel in entering into the non-prosecution agreement. We don't know the substance, okay, of those conversations. But he did have the benefit of consulting with counsel before he entered into the non-prosecution agreement, and again, he disclosed it to us, and again, we brought it out on direct examination.
Mr. Kamraju said, so I would just note that I think his non-prosecution agreement, like everybody's non-prosecution agreement, specifically says that they cannot give protection for criminal prosecutions either by other federal offices or state authorities. So I think it's pretty explicit that it doesn't cover it, Your Honor.
The court said, all righty. So I'm going to have to advise him of his rights and offer him counsel.
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, if I may, he has counsel with respect to his testimony here.
The court said, but does he have counsel present?
Mr. Finkel said, I don't know about that.
Ms. Murray said, I don't believe so.
Mr. Finkel said, as a general matter, this happens all the time. When our office provides a non-prosecution agreement, they have exposure also for state crimes. It happens all the time. Whether it's domestic violence or fighting or whatever it may be. He has decided to enter into the non-prosecution agreement and understands that he needs to answer questions on cross and direct and from Your Honor, completely and honestly with respect to all of his conduct. And we don't believe that any such instruction should occur, and if it does occur, which we would object to, for the record, it should occur outside the presence of the jury.
The court said, that part one got.
Mr. Finkel said, I was just, candidly, Your Honor, sort of with less formality attached to it. This happens all the time where people have exposure, and they enter into a non-pros. And while I appreciate defense counsel looking out for a witness, I don't think it's necessary here, and this is pretty standard practice.
Mr. Ferguson said, if I can add just one point to Mr. Kamraju's point about what's in the agreement. Like Mr. Finkel said, sort of every agreement covers the federal crimes. But it's hard to think of what would be a federal crime that would not also be a state or local crime, right? And so the agreement says, we can't formally give you coverage for that, but at your request, we will raise to the attention of any other prosecuting office the fact that you have entered a non-prosecution agreement with our office for this conduct.
Mr. Kamraju said, Your Honor, I'm sorry. I think this whole issue has been addressed in Castigar, which I think Castigar, categorically addresses this issue. Which is that he continues to have a Fifth Amendment right in connection with state offenses, despite the entry of a non-prosecution agreement. So I think Your Honor is well within your discretion, and frankly, it makes sense to advise him outside of the presence of the jury. But they cannot immunize him for state offenses, and this is apparently getting into.
Mr. Ferguson said, every single cooperator.
Mr. Kamraju said, And that is true then for every single cooperator.
Mr. Ferguson said, it never happens for every cooperator.
Mr. Kamraju said, that is the law.
The court said, well, you're in front of somebody who used to be a state judge sitting on the bench. So my question is, other than this area of this theft of wages, is there any other state crime that you intend to bring up?
Ms. Shrofa said, no. I don't think there is, actually. Wait.
Mr. Kamraju said, I don't think, right at this moment, Your Honor. If I can just take a look at her outline to make sure nothing is there, but I think the answer is no.
Ms. Shrofa said, I think there was a whole bunch of bounce checks, but I don't think there's any other state crimes. I think it was all federal. So I don't think so. But I'm happy to double check.
Mr. Finkel said, I'm not even sure this is theft of wages, but I understand.
Mr. Kamraju said, I think Your Honor is well versed on that, so.
Mr. Finkel said, I'm obviously not going to. I'm not going to enter that competition, so that should be clear on the record.
Ms. Shrofa said, I don't know. I kind of miss being in state court. I got to tell you, 100 Center Street was a lot more fun than this.
Mr. Kamraju said, does Your Honor intend to excuse the jury at this point or?
All counsel said, well, she was going to check her outline. That was my understanding of what she was going to do.
Mr. Kamraju said, oh, I misunderstood what you were going to do. I'll take a quick look at it just to make sure.
The court said yes.
Pause.
Ms. Shrofa said, I do not intend to cross him on his DUIs or his pot smoking, so I think this is it.
The court said, well, we can take a break.
Ms. Shrofa said, okay. I could use it.
The court said, I'm going to look into getting a CJA person, and let's just continue, and you'll go to a different subject matter.
Mr. Finkel said, he has counsel, retained counsel. We can certainly have him call his counsel, as opposed to a CJA. I'm sure he would be available. He knows he's testifying.
Ms. Murray said, my understanding he was aware he's testifying. He was just not in the state yesterday and today to be present.
The court said, who's his lawyer?
Ms. Murray said, James Pascarella.
Ms. Shrofa said, he also has Ezra Spilk, right, as a lawyer?
Ms. Murray said, formerly.
Ms. Shrofa said, he's on the CJA panel. Maybe he can call both of them. We have no objection to who he calls.
Ms. Murray said, I think we would, in the first instance, suggest he contact Mr. Pascarella, but we'd be happy to do that.
The court said, so you'll move on to a different subject matter. It looks like he's going to be back tomorrow.
Ms. Murray said, how long do you have?
Ms. Shrofa said, oh, I have.
Mr. Kamraju said, I think it's fair to say he's coming back tomorrow.
Ms. Murray said, we could take this up.
The court said, I'm going to stop before 3 o'clock because I have to finish completely by 3 o'clock, so.
Ms. Shrofa said, well, I thought we were going to 3 tomorrow, not today.
The court said, sorry. I'm talking before 2:45.
Mr. Finkel said, so we can release our other witness we're holding here for today?
Ms. Shrofa said, sure.
Mr. Kamraju said, yes.
In open court.
Ms. Shrofa said, may I continue, Your Honor?
The court said, you may.
Ms. Shrofa said, thank you. If I could just show what is marked as Government Exhibit BR 399.
By Ms. Shrofa.
Mr. Khaled, you recall testifying about this document yesterday, correct?
Yes.
And Ms. Murray asked you questions about this paragraph 5, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And paragraph 5, could you read that line for me? The equity grant will.
The equity grant will be subject to a vesting requirement.
Right. And you remember on direct yesterday you testified that you did not in fact get any of this equity or the shares that this contract provided for you. Correct? That's what you said?
Yes.
And did you fulfill the vesting requirement of this contract?
It wasn't clear what the vesting requirement was.
How long did you work there?
Almost a year.
Almost a year? How many months?
11 months, something like that.
That's less than 1 year. And you say it under oath that you don't know what the vesting requirements were, correct?
No.
Do you know what the vesting requirements were?
No.
Okay. So when you told the jury yesterday that you didn't get any shares, you weren't really entitled to any shares, right?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor."
The court said, "Sustained."
Under this paragraph 5, were you entitled to any shares?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor." He said he doesn't know.
The court said, "Sustained."
What is your understanding of the vesting requirement?
Entitled.
Excuse me?
Entitlement.
Entitlement to what?
Entitlement requirements. That's what I mean by vesting. That's what I understand what vesting is. Entitlement.
Right. So until you vest, you don't get anything, correct?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor." Asked and answered.
The court said, "Sustained."
Did you have an exit interview, by the way, when you left?
The court said, "Left where?"
Your employment?
The court said, "Where?"
With GTV. Did you have an exit interview?
I didn't leave.
You didn't leave? What happened?
They let me go.
They fired you?
They said the company is closing, not really, not requiring me.
Only you were told that, right?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor."
The court said, "Sustained."
Gladys still worked there, right?
I don't know where Gladys worked.
Ms. Young still worked there, right?
I don't know who still works there.
Alex, not now. I'm talking to you when you were fired. They still worked there, right?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor, to the characterization."
The court said, "Sustained."
Okay. When you were let go, that's the word you used, right? Let go, right?
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Young still worked there in HR, correct?
Maybe.
Maybe? Okay. How about Aaron Mitchell? Did he still work there?
Work where exactly?
East 64th Street.
At the building?
Yes.
At the townhouse?
Well, that's what you call it, but I just asked you about East 64th Street.
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor."
The court said, "Sustained."
Aaron Mitchell still worked there, correct?
He still worked for the family as a family office.
Who's Dan Podhasky, by the way?
Dan Podhasky?
Yes.
He was an in-house lawyer when I joined Saraca.
In-house where? For whom?
He worked for the rule of law.
Worked, according to you, at East 64th Street, correct?
Yeah.
He still worked there after you were let go, correct?
No.
He didn't work there when you were let go?
No.
Okay. How about Alex H?
Again, I lost touch with them, so I don't know if they continue to work there or not.
Okay. But on the day that you were let go, Alex H was still there, correct?
I don't know.
Now on direct testimony, you were asked questions about many entities, including Lexington Properties, correct?
Yes.
And then you were asked about Lamp, correct?
Correct.
And you were asked about Jovial, correct?
Correct.
Would it be fair to describe all three of these entities as family fund entities?
What do you mean by family fund entities?
What did you mean by family fund when you testified to the family fund?
What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean why you testified to family fund? Can you?
Yesterday on direct, when Ms. Murray asked you questions about the family fund, you answered those questions, correct?
Your question is not clear.
You testified yesterday in this courtroom?
Yes.
You testified about the family fund, correct? I'll try it again. You testified about the family office, correct? You remember that, at least?
Family office?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. What did you understand to be the family office?
An entity that took care of expenses, investments for the family.
Which family?
As you're asking me again, family office? That's what family office, in this, it's GTV family.
GTV family, correct?
Correct.
And Lexington Properties was an entity that paid the expenses of the GTV family, correct?
No.
It didn't pay the expenses?
No. Lexington Properties was to pay for employees and rent.
Okay. And whose rent was included in that?
I don't know. I didn't manage exactly.
So you don't know?
The transactions.
I'm sorry?
The transactions. I don't know.
Okay. So you don't know what transactions, correct?
The specific transactions, no.
You don't. Do you know general transactions? No, right?
General employees that worked in the townhouse.
Did you ever look at any paperwork for Lexington Properties?
Formation documents, yeah.
Did you look at any of their day-to-day payroll?
No.
Did you look at any of their bank accounts?
Not specifically, no.
You don't know what money came in, correct? And you don't know what money went out, correct?
Correct.
Let's talk about Lamp. What did Lamp do?
Same thing. It was told to me that Lamp was paying expenses for separate entities as well.
For separate entities or for the Gov't family?
Entities owned by the Gov't family.
What entities that were owned by the Gov't family did Lamp pay for?
There was a bunch of entities. I don't.
Name one.
I don't remember. You could show me.
Excuse me?
I don't remember.
You don't remember, right?
No.
Okay. You testified about a company called Regus, right? R-E-G-U-S? Remember that?
Regus, yeah.
And you testified that they're the company through which you rented virtual office space. Is that right?
Correct.
There's nothing illegal about virtual office space, is there?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor. He can't speak to a legal conclusion."
The court said, "Sustained."
Did you rent a virtual office?
Yes.
Did you sign a lease?
They don't call it a lease. It's an agreement.
I'm sorry?
It's not a lease, it's an agreement.
Okay.
Like, you know.
Thank you. So you signed the agreement, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And you signed virtual, I don't know. If it's not a lease, I guess agreements for virtual space for other entities also, correct?
For other entities, yeah. Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. And you testified on direct yesterday that you did that to show disassociation between Saraca, GTV, and Golden Spring, correct?
Different address, yeah.
Right. You chose the addresses, or did someone else?
For Lexington, Anthony wanted it close so they could pick up the mail.
My question to you was, did you choose the addresses, or did someone else?
Ms. Murray said, "Asked and answered, Your Honor." He answered the question.
The court said, "Sustained."
Ms. Schrofa said, "I'm sorry. Could somebody read that answer back for me, please?"
Record read. By Ms. Schrofa.
So, Anthony DiBattista was the one who wanted to be close so he could pick up the mail. Is that right?
Yes.
So you and Anthony DiBattista talked about what address to pick, correct?
Correct.
And you picked the address with him, correct?
He asked me to get an address that is close, and that location was the closest to the townhouse.
And you complied, correct? I'll move on. Before you started working there were no virtual offices, correct?
Ms. Murray said, "Just clarify where there is."
Ms. Schrofa said, "Oh, at East 64th Street."
The court said, "But there were no virtual offices in the United States or..."
Ms. Schrofa said, No. There were no virtual offices for any G entity before he got there. I apologize, Your Honor. That was a bad question. Sorry.
I wouldn't know that.
But you would know that because you wouldn't have had to get virtual office space if they already had it. Correct?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor."
The court said, "Sustained."
Before you signed an agreement for virtual office space, you checked, right? That there was no virtual office space for these entities beforehand?
Yes. They were new entities. Lexington was a new one, so.
How about Lamp?
Don't remember.
How about Jovial?
What do you mean?
An entity for which you got virtual office space.
I don't think we got an entity, a virtual office for Jovial.
Okay. So your testimony was you only got virtual office space for Lamp and Lexington.
Ms. Murray said, objection. That's not his testimony.
The court said, sustained.
Which other companies did you get a virtual office for?
G Music.
And where was G Music before you got it a virtual office?
I don't know.
It was at East 64th, right?
No.
You just said you don't know, but you know it wasn't at East 64th.
I know it wasn't at 64th, but I don't know what other addresses they had.
How about G Fashion?
Which G Fashion? There was multiple.
Did you open multiple virtual offices for G Fashion?
I know, but which G Fashion are you asking about?
I'm only asking about the G Fashion for which you opened a virtual office.
The G Fashion that was in the US had an office in California. But I don't know if it was a virtual or not.
G Fashion moved from California to New York, correct?
Again, which G Fashion?
And then it moved from New York to Italy, correct?
I don't know that.
Who signed the agreements for the virtual offices?
I don't remember. Either me or Yvette. I'm not sure.
Now you testified about an entity called Crane, correct?
Yes.
And on direct you testified that you created this entity after a discussion with Ms. Wang and an in-house attorney, correct? That's your testimony?
Correct.
Is it fair to say, Mr. Khaled, that you're the one who chose the name Crane, correct?
It was suggested to Yvette, and she approved it.
Isn't it true, Mr. Khaled, that you chose the name because you thought it was a lucky bird to name your company after?
Yeah, Chinese one.
Right. Ms. Wang had nothing to do with picking that name, correct?
It had a relationship to China.
That's not what I asked you. What I asked you was, Ms. Wang had nothing to do with you choosing that name. Isn't that correct?
Ms. Murray said, objection, Your Honor. Mischaracterizes the testimony.
The court said, you can answer this.
Can you repeat the question?
Ms. Shrofa said, could you read it back to him, please?
The court said, go ahead.
Record read.
She had approved the name.
Do you see a difference between choosing and approving?
Ms. Murray said, objection, Your Honor.
The court said, so you selected the name and then she approved it. Is that the way it happened?
The witness said, yeah, I suggested it and she approved it.
Did you email her about the name? No, right?
I don't remember.
You never texted her about the name, correct?
Again, I don't remember.
She never went with you when you went to incorporate the company, correct?
I did it online.
She wasn't there with you, right? When you did it online?
No.
And she had nothing to do with you paying the fee for that company, correct?
What do you mean had nothing?
In fact, isn't it fair to say, Mr. Khaled, that she couldn't care one way or another whether you opened or didn't open Crane?
Ms. Murray said, objection, Your Honor.
The court said, sustained. He can't testify as to how she felt.
Who controlled Crane?
In what instance?
In what instance?
Yeah. Like, what do you mean?
Who had ownership of Crane?
I had ownership on paper.
Is there any other way to have ownership of Crane?
On paper, no.
Is there any other way to have ownership of Crane other than on paper?
No.
And you testified yesterday on direct that it was through this entity Crane that you were going to apply for a license for a bank, correct?
Correct.
Your thought was that you were going to get a license for an actual bank, correct?
Correct.
And you also had the thought that you might want to get a license for an online digital bank, correct?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. And was it also your hope or your intention to set up an online digital bank?
Correct.
And as a banker of at least a decade, did you know that a person who has declared bankruptcy is disqualified from getting such a license?
Don't believe so.
You don't believe. You believe that a person who is in personal bankruptcy, while they're applying for the license to run a bank, is not automatically disqualified.
No. I did not know that.
You did not know that.
I don't know that for sure.
You don't know that for sure.
Ms. Murray said, objection, Your Honor.
No.
The court said, sustained.
Did you research whether or not your personal bankruptcy, which you are in even now, would disqualify you from owning a bank?
The attorneys we were talking to didn't see that would be an issue.
Did you tell the attorneys that you were in bankruptcy?
Yes.
Which attorneys did you tell? Did you tell Victor Serta that you were in bankruptcy?
Yes.
You told Victor Serta that you were in bankruptcy at the time that you were applying for a banking license?
Yes, he knew that.
You told Ms. Wang, Yvette Wang, that you were in bankruptcy while you were applying for a banking license?
Yes.
And your testimony, did you also share that information with Miles Gua?
Yes.
And when did you share that information with Yvette Wang, before or after you accepted that job?
After.
So you took a job, you didn't tell her you were in bankruptcy, and then you disclosed it to her after?
Yes.
When?
October of 2020.
When in 2020?
October.
October of 2020?
Yeah.
You told Ms. Wang in October of 2020 that you had declared personal bankruptcy.
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor." Asked and answered.
The court said, sustained.
Did she ask you for paperwork about the bankruptcy?
No.
Did she ask you how long you declared bankruptcy for?
No.
Did she ask you how much you owed the trustee in bankruptcy?
No.
So you told Yvette Wang, your employer, that you were in bankruptcy and she asked you no follow-up questions?
No. She said that she'll add somebody else to the company.
She'll add somebody else to whose company?
Crane.
But Crane was your company, right?
Correct.
She couldn't add anybody to your company at all, correct?
If she asked me to, I would have.
But she didn't ask you to, correct?
In the beginning, she did.
Oh, she asked you. And you said if she'd asked you, you would have, so why didn't you?
I was supposed to create it with Victor Serta.
Your testimony is Victor Serta was going to create a company with you?
Yes.
Sir, isn't it true that you and Mr. Serta absolutely did not get along? In fact, didn't you?
We were.
I'm sorry?
The court said, let him answer.
We went to Puerto Rico together.
You think because you went to Puerto Rico with Mr. Victor Serta, you got along?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor. That's not his testimony."
Ms. Schrofa said, I believe that was.
The court said, did you get along with Mr. Serta?
The witness said, yeah, we were fine.
Didn't Mr. Serta, in the middle of a meeting, call you a moron?
I don't recall that, no.
Didn't he mock you openly for trying to buy a bank without knowing that you'd need a license?
What do you mean? What? Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Didn't Mr. Serta openly mock you for thinking you could buy a bank in the United States?
I don't recall that, no.
Is it fair to say, Mr. Khaled, that other than that one trip on which you went with Mr. Serta, you've never traveled with him ever, correct?
Correct.
You've never been to Mr. Serta's home, correct?
No.
You've never been invited to socialize with him by him, correct?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, relevance."
Ms. Schrofa said, he said they were friends.
The court said no. He said that they got along.
Ms. Schrofa said, okay.
The court said so.
Mr. Serta never invited you to a single social event, correct?
Ms. Murray said, "Same objection, Your Honor."
The court said, sustained.
Mr. Serta never asked to join Crane, correct?
He was going to.
He was going to ask you?
That was the plan. No, the plan was he was going to join.
He was going to join.
And be part of the Crane, correct?
I'm sorry?
He was going to be part owner in Crane.
Mr. Serta was going to be part owner of Crane.
Yes.
You emailed with Mr. Serta, correct?
Correct.
You spoke to him by telephone?
Yes.
You spoke to him by text?
Yes.
And you gave all of those documents to the government, correct?
It was in the discovery, whatever I had.
There's not a single email, text, or exchange that corroborates what you're saying orally here today, correct?
Ms. Murray said, "Objection, Your Honor."
The court said, sustained.
You never sent Mr. Serta a proposal to join Crane, correct?
A proposal?
Yes. It's a business venture, right? Somebody's joining Crane.
No, but I have asked him for documents to join.
You never listen, please. Could you listen to my question?
Yes, go on.
My question was, did you send any proposal to Mr. Serta inviting him to join you at Crane?
When you put it this way, no.
Did you ever send any proposal to Yvette Wang to invite her to join you at Crane?
When you put it this way, no.
You had all those recorded calls, correct?
I have, yeah.
And not in one of those calls do you say, you know what, Yvette, you can just join Crane, correct?
What do you mean?
On these calls that you recorded, you never once say, Ms. Wang, come join me, be my partner in Crane. Correct?
No.
You never once said that to Mr. Serta, who's on the calls with you that you decided to record, correct?
Never told him what?
Come join me at Crane.
Not on those calls.
Not on any calls did you record ever inviting either of those two individuals to join you at Crane.
Ms. Murray said, objection. Asked and answered.
The court said, sustained. Asked and answered.
Ms. Schrofa said, Your Honor, is this a good time to stop or should I continue?
The court said, yes, this is a perfectly fine time to stop. It's 2:36. Members of the jury, we are going to finish our work for today a little bit early. Tomorrow you'll return to court to be ready to come into the courtroom at 9:30. Remember that you're not allowed to discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. Don't permit anyone to discuss the case in your presence. Don't read, watch, or listen to anything from any source that concerns any topic that touches on the subject of this trial.
Jury not present.
The court said, please be seated.
Mr. Kamraju said, Your Honor, I apologize. Before you address the witness, could I just have a very brief sidebar? I just want to share one thing.
The court said, okay.
Mr. Kamraju said, thank you.
At the sidebar.
Mr. Kamraju said, Your Honor had asked previously whether it's possible any other state law crimes would come up. A lawyer on our team flagged for me that he did submit an affidavit in the PACS litigation, which we may ask him about. I suppose if he disclaims that one of the statements in here is untrue, it's theoretically possible that that could raise it. But I just didn't want Your Honor to not have that with you when you were issuing your instructions. That's all.
The court said, okay.
Ms. Murray said, and I confirm that Mr. Pascarella is available to consult with Mr. Khaled.
The court said, okay. Good.
In open court.
The court said, Mr. Khaled, I want to tell you about a concern that I have. You were asked questions about the period of time when you were working both for Citibank and being paid by Lexington. Do you remember that?
The witness said, yes.
The court said, and Ms. Schroff started to ask you about whether you spent 7 hours working for each, for a total of 14 hours. And the agreement that you have with the prosecution, the non-prosecution agreement, that covers federal crimes, but it doesn't cover state crimes. If a person accepts compensation for work that they don't do, let us say they accept a salary but they work 0 hours in a day, it could be considered a type of theft. The reason that I bring this up is that you have an important constitutional right against self-incrimination, which means that you cannot be compelled to admit to a crime. So what I'm instructing you to do is to speak with Mr. Pascarella, your lawyer, and to raise this question with him as to whether or not you should be answering these questions about working both for Citibank and for Lexington at the same time. In addition, you may be asked about an affidavit that you signed in which there's a question as to whether or not you were truthful. Once again, making false statements can be a state crime, and you're not protected against state crimes. So I also want you to ask him about that. Do you understand? It's a yes or no question.
The witness said, no, I don't understand.
The court said, so you may recall seeing on television or on televised trials or hearing about people taking the fifth. So when you take the fifth, you're saying that, I'm asserting my right against self-incrimination. I am saying that I will not admit to a crime. That's what that amounts to. Because you don't have to. You have a right to remain silent about that. And so because of this question of whether or not you were accepting payment for work that you didn't do for a period of time and this other question of whether you may have not been truthful on an affidavit, because those things may constitute state crimes, I want you to speak with Mr. Pasquarella and ask him for his advice as to how to answer questions that might come up about those two subjects.
The witness said, sure.
The court said, you understand?
The witness said, yes.
The court said, all right. So you'll speak with him before you recommence your testimony tomorrow.
The witness said, okay.
The court said, all righty. Thank you. And you may step out. Don't discuss your testimony.
Ms. Murray said, just to be clear, Your Honor. Except as directed by the court with respect to discussing with Mr. Pasquarella tonight.
The court said, oh, of course. I am instructing you to discuss your testimony with Mr. Pasquarella.
The witness said, right. Thank you.
The court said yes.
Witness not present.
The court said, anything further?
Mr. Kamraju said, not from the defense, Your Honor.
Ms. Murray said, yes, Your Honor. Just briefly. The government also would like to speak with Mr. Pasquarella. We won't discuss the substance of Mr. Khaled's testimony. We just want to make sure that he understands what the issues are, that is. Mr. Pasquarella, so he can properly advise Mr. Khaled.
Mr. Kamraju said, I think that can be accomplished by providing the transcript to Mr. Pasquarella. He can just get the transcript, right? They can send the transcript to him.
The court said, if it's available. I just don't know how soon it's going to be available.
Mr. Finkel said, Your Honor, we just raised this because we don't want to run afoul. We're not going to talk to the witness. Obviously, but certainly we're entitled to talk with his attorney about the agreement he has with us, his lawyer.
The court said yes.
Mr. Finkel said, briefly, just so we know how many witnesses to tee up tomorrow, and also relevant to the parties' ongoing discussions about next week's schedule. Can Ms. Schroff provide us an estimate of how much longer is left on cross?
The court said, Ms. Schroff.
Ms. Schroff said, 2.5 hours.
The court said, did you say 2.5?
Ms. Schroff said, yeah. He was on there for a whole day and a half. I mean, and he also pauses for long. He takes such a long pause that I interrupt, and then she objects and she says I'm interrupting.
The court said, well, there's also a lot of repeated questions, and so you could be more efficient in the cross-examination.
Ms. Schroff said, I will try, Your Honor, but I do think that the asked and answered, I really don't think I got an answer. But I will try and not repeat myself.
The court said, all righty.
Ms. Schroff said, thank you.
The court said, have a good evening.
All counsel said, thank you, Your Honor.
Adjourned to June 12, 2024, at 9 a.m.